Hi guys, it's Sonia here with Sci-Fi Adventures, and I want to thank you for joining me for another installment of a science fiction story I've been writing called Time Tracks. And in the last video, we were in chapter 1, When Destiny Calls. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with the story. And we did leave off with Sophia. She was nervously waiting for Daniel to speak. So here we go. Daniel? Sophia cringed at the panic in her voice. After what seemed like an eternity, Daniel looked at her fully and ran a hand through his disheveled mahogany hair. His piercing blue eyes had never failed to take her breath away. In fact, Daniel France's eyes were one of the many reasons that Sophia had said yes when he had proposed to her a year ago during their anniversary dinner at Luigi's. Sophia felt a lump forming in the back of her throat as she remembered that night, and as she looked down at the diamond engagement ring on her finger, it felt as though its sparkle and shine only mocked her now. Her heart began beating rapidly at the first sharp pang of heartbreak. Daniel's once bright and piercing eyes that had always lit up when he looked at her now had a distant and dull expression, as though she were a complete stranger. Sophia fought back tears as the full realization of betrayal hit her. Feeling like she was living out a bad dream, Daniel finally spoke. But after all the waiting for it, Sophia desperately wished he would say nothing. She wished time would just stop completely, leaving Daniel at that picnic table so that she could get up and run somewhere, anywhere but here. Unfortunately, time did not stop, and Daniel spoke out what Sophia already knew. "I'm sorry, Sophia, but I've met someone else." There it was, hanging thick in the air between them. Daniel looked relieved, and as Sophia looked into his eyes one last time, she saw a stranger. Whatever had happened to change him, it was clear to her in that moment that he no longer was her Daniel. In that instant of realization, something unexplainable and miraculous began to come over her. It was like a veil over her eyes had been removed, and she felt freed. Freed from what exactly, she was not sure. But a sudden calm came over her, and then an odd sensation of displacement, as though she did not belong there and never had belonged there at all. Suddenly the world around her shifted as though in slow motion, like an old snapshot caught in time, but fading more and more from her view. It was then she noticed the cool air splashing her cheeks as the wind picked up the fallen autumn leaves, causing them to swirl around the pavilion. Through what felt like a great distance, Sophia strained to hear whatever else Daniel was trying to say. And it seemed as though he might have sensed the shift too, because he cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled as though there were a great distance between them. "Her name is..." Sophia never heard the rest, because that was the moment everything changed completely. She had no memory of leaving the pavilion or getting up from the picnic table. Had the wind carried her? Was she just in shock and did not remember leaving? Whatever the reason, Sophia found herself walking up a very steep and unfamiliar incline. She knew Asbury Park very well. In fact, she had taken many walks there, yet she had no memory of any incline or terrain like this. Gasping to catch her breath, she felt compelled to keep going, as though some unseen force were drawing her onward, even though her legs were aching and she was thirsty. Okay, guys, that wraps up this second installment of Time Tracks. I do hope you're enjoying the story. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to being back with you again with more of Time Tracks and more sci-fi adventures.